Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prabh, and today we're going to discuss about the basics of cybersecurity, which is a very important topics if you're preparing for the CompTIA and CC exam. My name is Prabh Nair. For more information, you can check my LinkedIn profile, and if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. Okay, so the first part in this topic is threat. So let's understand what is threat. So threat is anything that has potential to cause harm to the system or an organization. Now it can be person or it can be situation. Okay, so let me explain you with the example. Now if you basically take the perspective of the scenario, let's say example is we have a house. Okay, so threat could be a burglar who might break into your house. So that is one example. Because when you're talking about the threat is an action which basically trigger. So let's understand with the one scenario. So let's take example, this is my house. Okay, so this is my house. Now what is a concern? Even I have a strong physical door. I have a light. Okay, but if there is any bad actor, okay, or some guy, now he knocked the door or she knocked the door, I open the house and they can do attack on my house, right? So it is an action which basically trigger here. So threat is an action. Okay. Now, if you really want to understand from the, you can say a security point of view. Okay. So that is called a threat is an hacker who want to steal sensitive data. The hacker who want to hack your data, that is basically called as a threat. Now let's take an information security example. We have a server here. Okay, so this is basically my server. Okay, or this is basically my smartphone. Okay, I have some images in my smartphone. Okay, I have some audio, I have some video on my smartphone. Okay, so that is something very valuable for me because it is an asset. Now, for me, the concern is if my girlfriend see these messages, or for me, the concern is my father or my mother see these messages. So at least for me, that is a threat at the age of less than 18 and all that. And for me, the biggest concern is tomorrow is someone stole my phone. Okay, and or someone steal my phone and they see my images for which I am not happy. So these are basically called as a threat because they're doing an action. What is the action they're doing? They're checking my phones. They're trying to steal my phone. So that's an action. Okay, they're doing. So threat can be a hacker. Threat can be my family member. Okay, from which I should have a fear. If they hack, if they get, then it's a problem. So threat is an hacker who want to steal sensitive data. The threat can be intentional or it can be unintentional within the organization. So let's say example, we have a system here. Okay. And we have an employee. He received one phishing link. He clicked on the phishing link with this impression that, okay, it's some informative things. So it was his unintentional attempt. He was not intentionally doing that. Okay, I want to damage my company. No. He clicked on the phishing link. He was not in the impression that link can help you to help the hacker to reset the password. So what hacker did, hacker basically sent a phishing link to the A. He clicked on the link and hacker basically gained access to the system. So here hacker is a threat, the action what he performed. Employee is become my threat because unintentionally he basically clicked on the link. But there are some employees who intentionally want to commit a crime. For example, I'm on a notice period. I don't like my manager. So before leaving, I'm doing one action is I'm trying to steal data. I'm trying to steal documents. So that is basically called as a threat. So when we're talking about the threat aspects, one thing we need to understand here is threat has a factors. Okay. So when we trigger any threat has a factor. The first is called as a motive. Second is basically called as an opportunity. And third is basically called as a mean. Now, when we say motive is basically mean what basically drives. See, for me, the motivation, I want to shut down my manager mouth, or I want to uh, create damage to my company. That is my motive, because they're terminating me. So motive basically mean what drives the attacker. Like for me, the financial gain, because the competitor is paying me money. So that was my motive to hack. So motives refer to the reason or incentive behind, you can say, why the threat actor want to carry out an attack. Second is basically called as an opportunity. Opportunity mean the weakness, the weak controls that he identify. Okay, so my family member knows very well. I keep my phone when I go for a washroom, example, or when I go for gym and all that. I keep my smartphone at the desk. So that time my parents use this opportunity and try to check the thing. So here the opportunity basically means circumstances which allow the threat actor to carry out an attack. Outdated vulnerabilities. Okay, there's no security guard. Okay, so that is basically called as an opportunity. Opportunity where the vulnerability situation can the threat actor exploit, unpatched softwares. And third is basically called mean. It means skill. What is the capability he has? I know hacking, that is my skill. So as a security professional, what we can control is the opportunity which they're going to exploit. Okay, somehow today we have a solutions in place where we can identify what is the method they can use, which is called TTP. So that's why you heard about the new buzzword in the market called threat intel. So by which we can able to predict maximum behavior. So that is basically called as a threat actors. So when we trigger any threat is driven by three factors: motive, opportunity, mean. So by understanding the motive, opportunity, mean, the company can basically better assess the threats and implement the appropriate measures. Is it clear? So let's take one example. Okay, imagine there's a cyber criminal group targeting a retail company. So this is the retail company we have. So we have a retail company. Okay. So imagine a cyber criminal group targeting us. So there is a hackers or groups which targeting a retail company. So anything has a word called action, that is a threat. So here the motive of the cyber criminal is to have a financial gain. They aim to steal customer data. They aim to steal information, which is they want to sell it on the dark web. So that is basically called as a motive. Second is called as an opportunity. Opportunity is basically, we have discovered the retail company basically having a servers which is running with the outdated vulnerabilities. Okay, so companies running a outdated e-commerce software with a known vulnerability which can be easily exploited. And third, the criminal group have a sophisticated malware and they have a special skills to send a phishing mail. That is called as a mean. So that is how they basically target. So security professional, what they do, they will try to see proactively, is the other companies also facing the same method of attack, or what is the opportunity. So they try to use a reference and try to patch that. So that is the basically visibility we have from the mean, and proactively by which we can able to apply the controls. So threat is the most important factor we have that we need to understand. I'm sure these pointers are basically clear to everyone. Now we're moving to the next part, which is basically called as a vulnerability. So vulnerability is a weakness or a gap in a system that can be exploited by the threat. It is a flaw that make the asset susceptible damage. See, one thing what you can do is you can control vulnerability. You cannot control threat. If anyone want to do attack, they will do attack. It is your weakness if you react to that. I'll give you one layman example. So there is a one person, my relative, okay. So he has a weakness that, okay, he cannot say no to anything. Okay, so there was my relative, so he cannot say no to anything. So that is his weakness. Now threat was, there is a one in-laws, or there was a one family member who basically bring a marriage proposal. He said, do you like this girl? He cannot say no because he has to study, but he's having a vulnerability. He has a weakness. He cannot say no to that. So here, the intention of this uncle or intention of this auntie was successful. So they basically get the marriage of the person with that girl, or vice versa. So here what happened, the uncle or auntie who basically coming with a marriage proposal are the threat. And they can be successful targeting that particular person if having a weakness which can say no to that. If we say no, then it's not a vulnerability. But they use this as an opportunity because they know very well they will not say no to that proposal. So vulnerability is basically a weakness. So if you're understanding from the perspective of non-technical, like we continuing with the house analogy, vulnerability could be unlocked door or open window where thief can basically use to access, right? So that is basically called as a vulnerability. Now, if you basically take a perspective, so let's take example, we have a house here. So this is basically the house. Okay, so it having an open door. So the thief can use this open door to attack. So for a thief, it is an opportunity. Okay, and he using his skill, which is called method, by which he penetrate into the house. So we cannot predict when they're going to attack, but we can able to control what is a weakness we have. So we should close the door and all that. That's a important part we have. So if you see the technical definition of the vulnerability technical definition is outdated software, okay, weak password, which is persist in the asset. So that is basically called as a vulnerability. Now the third part is basically we need to understand the risk. Okay, so remember one thing, action is equal to threat. What we can see in the asset is the vulnerability. Is it clear? What we can control is the vulnerability to patch. But what we cannot control, that is called threat. We can predict, but we cannot control, okay, tomorrow do the attack or day after tomorrow do the attack. You do attack, it's okay. But I have a vulnerability. If their vulnerability is there, they can able to exploit. If there's no vulnerability, they cannot able to exploit. So we're putting a control to patch the vulnerability, not a threat. Okay, so let's move to the next part, which is called as a risk. Now with the same context, if you can see, risk is the potential for a loss or damage when threat exploit vulnerability. Okay, risk is a probability. Risk is not something which is already occurred. So we have two things here. One is basically called as an incident, and one is basically called as a risk. The thin line difference is risk is a incident is a confirmed action. Okay, burglar attacked and steal data or steal assets. So it's already done. It's an incident. But if you don't close the door, if you keep the window open, there is a possibility someone can attack and they can take your asset with you. So that is a risk. Risk is a probability. So when sometime what happened, we learn the lesson from our neighbors. Oh, they have opened the door, that's why thief came and they attacked. So we use this opportunity, we use this information, and what we did proactively, we close the door and we close the window. So risk is the potential for a loss or a damage where threat exploit the vulnerability. It is a likelihood of a threat taking advantage of vulnerability and impact it would we have. So let's take example, we have a server here. Server basically have a weak password. It has an open vulnerability. So what hacker did, hacker tried to exploit this vulnerability. Okay, hacker is an action which is a threat actor who performing an action to exploit the vulnerability by which they gain access to the system. By gaining access, he steal data. That is the loss I have, and that is basically risk. Okay, the loss I face from the attack, the loss which I see as a company, that is a risk which I don't want to lose. Understood? So that is a pointer we're trying to understand here. So risk is basically the possibility of the hacker exploiting a software flaw to access and steal sensitive data. Okay, and that potentially lead to the financial loss and reputational damage. That is the risk I have here. So with the context of information security or normal thing, threat is a burglar, vulnerability is called as an unlocked door, and risk is chance of burglar entering to the unlocked door and steal valuable. That is a loss I have. So if you want to map with the information security, let's understand with the information security context. So that give you the better visibility. So threat is a hacker who want to steal sensitive data, which is an action. Vulnerability is basically a weakness, a outdated software application with known security flaw. Anything with the asset is a vulnerability. Risk is basically the possibility of the hacker exploiting the software flaw to access sensitive data that lead to the potential loss. See, this is the definition of the possibility of hacker is a threat. Exploiting a software flaw is a vulnerability. If they do, what is the impact? Impact is representing as a risk. It is a financial loss. Okay, so that is something is basically here. Okay, so that is the impact we have. So we know, okay, there is a possibility they hack my server, they can steal data. There is a possibility thief attack my house, take the asset. Okay, we know there is a loss of asset, but actual, what is the value of the loss? How much I'm going to lose? Example, if I'm fail in the exam, I lose 750. That is a risk I'm taking here. So I need to know the exactly that particular value of the loss. I know there is a loss, but I want to know exact loss. So we have a formula to calculate the risk. So let's understand the formula. So when you're talking about the formula is likelihood and impact. So if you see the formula of a risk, we calculate like risk equal to likelihood and impact. So what is likelihood? Now, if you go by the definition, it refers to the probability that given threat will exploit the vulnerability. It means we're talking about chance of occurrence. Okay, so that's why we say it measure the estimate that occurrence of an event. That is called likelihood. And impact is basically referred to the potential consequences of a damage resulting from a threat exploiting the vulnerability. That is called as an impact. Okay, so let's understand with the example. So we have a server here. So we have a server. Okay. For example, if you have a server, which is a website, okay, if it's not updated, if it's outdated, okay, and it is configured with the common vulnerability, okay, so hacker basically have a higher chance to exploit that. So this is called as a likelihood. Okay, if there is a known vulnerability and their information is available outside, so there is a higher probability that hacker can able to exploit that. So likelihood is basically high. But if it happen, okay, does it have a PII data? Yes. So even if he hack one time, he might access to the PI data, which is the biggest loss for the company. They might face a regulatory issues. So impact is basically from that activity. What is the impact? What is the severity it will occur? Okay, so if hacker exploit the vulnerability, the impact would be on what the hacker could do. If he could access to the sensitive customer data, the impact would be high because of the potential of data theft, privacy breach. So there is a formula called likelihood. So chance of likelihood is suppose one time in a year. Here, how to calculate the likelihood? Because likelihood mean what is the probability of attacking that. So here your experience matter, your past data matter. If you're doing for the new project, we always keep the likelihood 1. So for that also we create a table. Okay, impact we know, if a target, I might lose this data. So same like, let's take example of CompTIA Security plus exam. What is the probability of questions coming in the exam? Can you predict? No. So it's based on experience with a mentor. You ask mentor, so how important is the domain 1? It's very, very important because most of the question you can get from domain 1. So likelihood of the questions coming from the domain 1 is high because threat here is questions. And those questions which basically exploit the weak areas. And if you don't answer, impact is basically you lose your $250 or $300, whatever the impact is there. So here, in this case, the impact is basically all about the loss. So when we're talking about impact as a matrix, okay, measure the estimate the consequence of impact. So here we have a combination formula is we're trying to quantify, okay, 0.3 is a probability of happening. But even if it happens, the impact value is $10,000 or $1 million. So overall value is coming is $30,000 is a risk. So that's something we have calculated. Is it clear? So this data, it's completely based on experience, based on your knowledge, based on the data, past data and all that. Like in the past, this is how activity happened. So let's take example, if the server connected with the internet, we have a higher likelihood. But if the server is a part of the internal network, we have a less likelihood. It's come with experience, okay? What is special about this kind of a video is, it basically come with a question. So let's discuss some coffee shots to understand whether you understand the topic or not, okay? So which of the following best describe a threat in the context of cybersecurity? Option A, software bug, but that is a vulnerability. Individual event potentially cause harm to system, that's an action. Security measure implement to protect data, that's a control. And technique used to recover lost data is a control. So answer is basically B for beta, because B is talking about the action. Let's go with the next coffee shot. What is a vulnerability in the context of cybersecurity? Strong password policy is a control. Unpatched software flaw that can exploit, yeah, makes sense. Method of preventing, that's encryption. Comprehensive backup solution is a control. So answer is basically B, unpatched software flaw, because that is a persist in the system. Third question, how is risk defined in the cybersecurity? Option A, amount of money spent on security measure. Potential for loss or damage where threat exploit the vulnerability. Option C, process of identifying mitigating risk, threats. And D is implementation of firewall. So D and A is the control part. C is only talking about threat. The answer is basically B, potential for loss or damage when threat exploit the vulnerability. So do let me know how do you find this particular series where small topic I'll drag to the 20 minutes with the question practice. Your comments, your feedbacks is very, very important, which help me to improve my content better. Good day. Bye.